Well, joining us now in studio, I have the pleasure of welcoming ANC Secretary-General Mantashe to speak to us a little bit about the life of Mantashe Stofile. SG, just reading some of the tributes that have been coming in. He was praised not only by members within the ANC, but many people in opposition parties also praising the work that he did.
Now, the most important thing about Stof is that he was a rounded cadre of the movement, which reflected the journey he traveled. He was a sport activist, he was a student activist. He contributed in making all understand that there could be no normal sport under abnormal political system. And therefore, circus politics were coming through his mouth and taught us. People forget that. In 1970, he was part of the group of activists who went to New Zealand to stop the apartheid tour of the Springboks to New Zealand in 1970. That is Stof, and therefore he was an inspiration to many, many, many young people like us for a long time. Yeah.
Secretary General, you call him Stof. I don't know what your personal relationship with him was. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, and also your response and reaction to the news when you finally heard it.
I think the first thing we should do is to send condolences to the family.
Definitely.
He looks young. He's 72. That's not very young. That's exactly the age I lost my father, you know. And therefore he was quite a leader. To me, he's not my friend. He's my leader. He's my elder brother. Gasti Stof is Stofile, meaning that elder brother. And that is in the tradition to respect him. And as a political leader, he took us through various phases. The UDF was a culmination of a long journey of taking people through things that are not going to be talked about. This is underground activities. And in that work, he touched the lives of many people. And those people, I'm sure they will come to the fore this week and actually explain how they related to him. He is ever smiling, Stof, never angry, always laughing at you. Even when he is harsh on you, he is harsh on you with a smile. And I think we should pay full respect to him. Going to Parliament, freedom was actually fruit of hard work of people like Stof.
And he often had to make what would consider to be unpopular decisions. You know, he led from the front in the campaign for non-racial sport. You know, you mentioned that the All Blacks rugby tour. He often had to make decisions that at the time were not very popular.
He was a theologian and a sport activist, as I said. And what I don't know, not popular to who. You know, he was quite a difficult opponent to those who were against him, but quite a comfortable leader to those who worked with him, because all of us wanted to be free. He sacrificed many things because he loved freedom not for himself, but for others. And that's what makes him different. When he led the Eastern Cape after freedom, he made quite a dramatic change in terms of ensuring that there was effective governance in the Eastern Cape. And that was tough. And sometimes called upon to take very serious and tough decisions, and Stof would.
Now we've touched on his role as a former sports minister and you know his contributions there, but he was also a former ANC chief whip. Just talk to us about, you know, strides he made within the ANC itself.
Let's start with the former minister. The minister was a task. It was given that task because he was known that he understood sports in details. Integration of various racial sports bodies was quite a huge task. The question of transformation in sport is still something that was talking about. But what is happening, we will be happy about, is that as you see a South African representative team going to the Olympics and get medals. When you see Van Niekerk getting a medal and breaking a world record, you must appreciate that it's not a gift. A few years ago, you would never be in that team. So you see a young black athletes going through in a national team And that is the product of the work that many people take for granted. In the ANC, he was quite, see, the UDF was actually a body that we regard as fulfilling the work of making South African governable and making apartheid unworkable. He was in the forefront of that, leading the border region. And when it was free, then it became the ANC. We all dissolved the UDF, got into the ANC. And when we went to parliament, it was one of the many new parliamentarians when he was made a chief whip. A chief whip is a party hack, a person who calls party activists and parliamentarians to be disciplined and do the party work in parliament. And I think the first turnover of chief whips now in the ANC reflect the change in the caliber of people who are holding this position. We're hoping that we can regain that stature of a chief whip who is actually respected and call people to order and be able to relate to other parties, because when you're a party, there's also the important role of nursing relation with other parties in parliament.
You had to chat to us about the late Mantashe Stofile, the sports minister who passed away this week. Very sad news at the age of 72. But it obviously would be amiss for me not to ask you about the EFF and the DA today, holding press briefings in terms of possible coalition announcements. Can you say to us today that you're not in any coalition with them? Do you have any idea of what they may be speaking about today?
No, I don't want to speak for the DA and the EFF. We've talked to many parties, including the EFF. We didn't talk to the DA because they made it quite clear that they will not talk to us. And then we thought we should not waste their time. We've spoken to many other parties. We're working with keenness to hear what they will announce today in terms of coalitions. I don't think what we are going to see out of these are coalitions per se. It will be cooperation among parties, and parties will still want to have the freedom to do what they want to do and be able to criticize each other openly when it is necessary. And that is what we're expecting out of these talks. Many of the parties that we talk to agreed to cooperate with us on certain aspects because they think that we can help them achieve certain objectives, and we wanted them to help us achieve other objectives. So you're going to see more than just formal coalitions. We'll see cooperation agreement among parties.
And on that topic, SG, do you think that forming coalitions is the best option here with regards to those hung municipalities? I mean, what are the other possibilities here?
There are many possibilities. There will be minority governments in some, where there are no coalitions and people go and form a government, but a minority government. But the disadvantage of that is when you have to pass things like the budget, which requires a majority support, you'll have to lobby everybody as if we are forming a coalition at that point. But you're going to see new dynamics developing in South African political space.
You say you've been in talks with the EFF. I mean, a lot of your members, a lot of your supporters may be saying that you're betraying them, in terms of being, in talks with them, considering that the EFF have made it very clear that they want to see the ANC destroyed.
You see, there's a chapter in the Bible I always liked reading, where Haman wanted to crucify I forget now. And ultimately, that cross hang Haman. You cannot be driven by the desire to destroy. You must always be driven by the desire to build. And that's why we engage everybody. We have no desire to destroy, we have a desire to build, including building a South Africa that is a home for all the people.
Julius Malema, leader of the EFF, has also mentioned that the EFF will only get into a coalition with the ANC if the agreement is made that President Jacob Zuma steps down. The ANC has responded in that regard, but can you just elaborate for us on what the stance is?
You see, when you put it that kind of a condition, it's like walking into a room and say you want to talk to the EFF and say, but I don't want to see Julius here. It's not a condition. We are having our own problems, we're discussing them, we're looking into the results of the elections. But the worst thing that you can do is, when you are in trouble, to humiliate yourself and be cooperating in your own humiliation. It is not done. We agreed to talk to them on many policy issues, which were not far. Actually, we're very close to each other on the land question, we're very close to each other on the education question, we're very close to each other on the mineral banking issues, we're very close on all those issues. And then therefore, those are policy issues. That's the basis for cooperation. But if you put something that is not a policy matter, but a structural matter, you create obstacles to the cooperation. But we continue to talk to them. We'll wait for their announcement today.
But I mean, these are the people who want to see you destroyed. I mean, can you realistically work with them?
We negotiated with the Nationalist Party, which regarded us as communists, who must be destroyed, who must never be there. We're not regarded as citizens. We talk to them. We achieve freedom talking to them. There's no need to talk to people who agree with you. Talks are more important when you talk to people who disagree with you.
With regards to, the performance of the ANC during the local elections that had just passed, a lot of people are of the opinion or of the view that, President Jacob Zuma should be solely held responsible for, the ANC not performing maybe to the lengths that it would have liked to. Does the ANC, feel like President Jacob Zuma is a major reason for the performance or the lack thereof in the local government elections? What is the ANC's view with regards to comments coming through like that?
We had 4 days of engagement, which was quite robust and difficult, and they looked into all aspects. We appreciate the fact that negative narrative that was directed at President Zuma did contribute to our decline. Okay, we accepted that.
Okay.
But we also accepted the fact that it will be foolhardy of ourselves to think that decline in a number of provinces in the way we did could only be attributed to an individual. That's why at the end of the day we said we must take collective responsibility as the NEC, and we'll talk to our provincial structures to take responsibility, because we saw quite a number of foreign tendencies during that time. One, the question of fighting of ANC members in meeting, the killings that happened because people want to be candidates and councillors. There are quite a number of foreign tendencies that we have observed that has also destroyed us a great deal. One of them, even today, continues. Even today, people still come through and say, I don't think that should be a mayor, I think I should be a mayor. It's something new in the ANC. We never knew that. We always waited to be deployed to that position and that position. But today people want to say, I want to be a councillor, and I want to be a mayor, I want to be a speaker. It can't be that person, it should be so-and-so who is a speaker. And then we group ourselves behind individuals. Those are new challenges that we must deal with.
And just on the topic of Tshwane specifically, looking back at the response when Toko Didiza was initially established as the mayoral candidate, how much of an impact do you think that entire debacle had on the performance?
You know something called a false decoy? Toko Didiza became a subject of that. Because by the time we said Toko must act, there was already conflict in Tshwane.
Okay.
One of the slogans that was around there was that no Sputla, no vote. You remember? And in the list that came out of the region for mayoral candidates, Sputla's name was not appearing. So that shows you that there was conflict there. Togo was a convenient excuse to direct the anger at. But the anger was more than that. It is again the issue of our own structures being divided, comrades fighting as if there's no tomorrow. Until we confront that, we'll have many, many problems in many areas.
Let's just go back to the DA and the EFF's press briefings today. Should they, and we're speculating, should they enter into a coalition or an agreement, there is a likelihood that you might lose control. You've obviously lost control of the Western Cape as well, Tshwane and Johannesburg now. Should they go that route, what will your reaction be to that? I mean,
I don't want to speculate about other people's coalitions.
But it does affect you directly.
Yes, I don't want to speculate on that because I will not have the insight. I don't know what happened to their talks. I have no clue at all. So trying to speculate on that will be quite presumptuous of me. The reality of the matter is if you have not performed to be an outright majority, you must, on some instances, accept that you will be in opposition and prepare to be an effective opposition. That's what happens.
Let's discuss this 4-day NEC meeting that took place. What was discussed there, and also what is the ANC's plan going forward in order to, retain the votes that you do have, but also get back those so-called lost votes? What is the plan?
The ANC can only recover it and invest in rebuilding its structures. And any organization performs in terms of the capacity of its structures to do certain things. National leadership take ownership and responsibility collectively, and everyone must say, what was my role when this decline happened? Where was I? I said to one journalist when he said, but you see President Zuma's response, I say, I accept that, but I also accept the fact that if President Zuma pulls the party down, and we're 86 in the NSC, we can't do anything about that, we are equally guilty. Because conference elected 86 of us into the NSC, hoping that collectively we'll lead the ANC. If we're sleeping on duty, we're equally guilty. That's the point we made. But the reality of the matter is, until you invest and revive your structures, because national structures, I always tell people that in national structures, you push papers. Members are in the branches, are in the regions, are in the provinces. If those structures, that engine is misfiring at that level, you will never do well.
Are heads going to roll?
I don't know. Preferable would be people volunteering to go, you see, including me.
Are you volunteering to go?
Including me, is that, listen, we have not done well, comrades, what do we do? Do we still have to sit here and be ready to lead, or should we give way? But in doing so, never be irresponsible by creating a vacuum and deepen the crisis further.
And on that topic of heads rolling and new leadership coming in, there's also a conversation happening of a need for younger leadership and a younger president. What is the ANC's view on that?
This question of generations is sometimes very objective, but sometimes very subjective, I know sometimes there was this generation mix as we went to Mangaung, and it happened to be talking about one individual. And there's no generation mix of individual. Generation mix is a volume of young people getting into the structures. You can't accuse the ANC of not having that. Actually, in the ANC, there is integration of generations. It becomes a code name for a fight for something that we'll have to get sense of what it is. But the reality of the matter is that there should be an attempt to renew the ANC. If it means younger leaders, why not? But it can't be life and death that you remove old and therefore young is clever. It can't be like that. That old is dead. See, I fought with a few young people. I said to them, the notion of old being no brains is actually a dangerous concept. And then youth means intelligence. It's a different concept. Let's look into the problem. Elect a leadership that will talk to the challenges. If the voter is getting younger in South Africa, to have more young people in the leadership makes sense.
You mentioned you're ready to sit in opposition. You're quite happy to do that as indicated on the back of your NEC meeting. Are you ready to sit in opposition? It's not a familiar place that you guys are with.
We are used to it. In the majority of municipalities in the Western Cape, we're in opposition. And in the legislature, they were in opposition. We're grappling in trying to understand how to be in opposition. So let's ready ourselves for that in some instances. There are 27 municipalities where there is no outright winner. I would imagine that in some of them will be in opposition.
Now, we've touched on the economic freedom fighters discussions the ANC has had with them with regards to coalition talks. Let's move our attention to the Democratic Alliance and take us through some of those discussions.
No, we never had discussion.
You never had
DA.
discussion, and there's no plan to have a discussion with the DA.
There are no plans to have any discussion with the DA.
Why is that?
Because their posture is that they don't talk to the enemy. They treat the enemy as they treat the ANC as the enemy. Now, when you are
so did the EFF.
No, not really. Not really. You will be surprised, actually, that in many police positions, the EFF is closer to us than any other party in the country, by the way, because they came out of us, they graduated from us, they know a lot of what we're doing than what other people do. So the DA is more aggressive in treating us as the enemy. Now, you give them space to discover that there's no enemy in politics. You will have to engage people, try to find a common ground to do the work.
It's not kind of what Julius Malema said on the back of those results in the election. He said, and I don't want to paraphrase, but he said he would like to see the death of the ANC.
He is leading a party. He would like to grow the FF and kill the ANC. That is normal.
Yeah.
There's nothing strange about that. He formed a party. I would imagine that when everybody was excited about COPE was saying the same thing, where the real ANC will grow and want to see the back of the ANC living. The rest is history. Julius was saying he leads the party. His intention is to have a strong party. Whether that will translate into the death of the ANC, it depends on what the ANC does.
And with regards to you saying people would be surprised to know how close the ANC and the EFF are with regards to, obviously the land issue, education and so forth, when Julius Malema, who's the leader of the EFF, made those comments at the local government elections centre, the IEC in Pretoria, about certain ministers and so forth. What was the ANC's initial response to very strong comments coming from the leader of the EFF?
When you are a governing party, everybody shoots at you. Strong winds press the tallest trees. If you don't want heat, you don't get into the kitchen. When you are a governing party, that is part of what happens to you all the time. Actually, people can project you as anything and everything that you are not. But I'm talking at policy level. We agree on land. We need more, land must be distributed more equitable. The current distribution of land is not equitable. It's not sustainable. We need more people to have access to education. That's why a resolution of free education is our resolution from the 52nd National Congress. We qualified by saying for the poor, because if I can afford paying for the education of my kids, I must continue paying. But we must never destroy the future of a young person on the basis of the economic standing of a household. On mining, we have established a state mining company. It must grow, it must be there, it must be visible, it must compete. On banking, we have resolved to form a state banking company. It is very slow, it doesn't move. So there are quite a number of issues at the level of policy where we are closer to each other.
But yet, at the end of the day, it's clear that Julius Malema does not recognize President Jacob Zuma. They stood up, they left once the president addressed any briefing.
Now, if you leave when I stand up and you say, you don't recognize me, actually you recognize me. The fact that you are leaving when I speak means that you see that Mantashe is now speaking, then I leave. Then you recognize me.
Really?
And
is that how you see it?
You feel my presence, yes. All you are doing, you are expressing your feeling in an emotional way. But you recognize me. Otherwise, if you did not, you didn't see, even if I'm taking the podium, you'd be indifferent.
And has the ANC had discussions around Julius Malema's attitude towards President Jacob Zuma and how he treats the president?
No, we can't have that discussion. It's not necessary. he is leading a party. He has a right to lead his party in his own way style. It can't be an issue for them to discuss, hey, leadership style of Julius Malema is this or that. What the EFF does, if it disrupts Parliament, you spend time on, hey, the EFF is disrupting Parliament now. You can't, because it's an objective factor. Something that you have no control over. It happens. All you should prepare yourself is to, how do you respond when it happens?
SG, you mentioned the reprioritization of the budget a little bit earlier on, one way to win back the ANC's loyal voters. What do you mean by that?
Not to win back the loyal voters, to do what is necessary for the country. That reprioritization, we refer to the 9-point plan, we refer to the NDP, that you cannot have 9 priorities and the budget doesn't reflect that. If you say agriculture is your priority, it must be reflected in the budget for agriculture. If you say the value chain in agriculture, you must actually be clear on how you do recapitalization, how to do helping farmers, what you do when there are problems in agriculture and so forth. If you talk about creating black industrialists, how do you do that? How do you support small business? That must be reflected in resources allocated.
Just back to the discussion around President Jacob Zuma, has the ANC at any point discussed a possibility of the president stepping down? We do know that that is or was one of the conditions of the EFF, but has the ANC on its own ever had that discussion?
Can I tell you, when there's a big noise about that, it actually kills the discussion in the ANC. Okay? When everybody, you know, during the Concord judgment, there was a big noise, including a motion of impeachment. When there's that noise from the opposition benches, you actually totally destroy the opportunity to have that discussion in the ANC. My own view is that we're deprived of that opportunity by the big noise by opposition forces. Because if we do that, you know what you do? You succumb to the opposition. It's like in the rugby field, when you scrum, your opponent say to you, no, change your front rankers. This should be a tight head and this should be a loose head. You will refuse, because why should your opponent tell you what to do? And advice from your opponent.
But this is not the opponents. This is the Constitutional Court. I mean, they're
no, the Constitutional Court didn't say we must fire President Jacob Zuma. Okay, it is what people say as a consequence of a court judgment. You should do X, Y, and Z. That's the point I'm making.
But the Constitutional Court ruling that he used public money for his own personal reasons is justifiable from opposition parties.
The judgment. Don't confuse the public protector's report and the court judgment. Okay. The most serious point out of the judgment is acting inconsistently with the Constitution. Okay. And therefore the enforcement of the public protector's report, and that is being done.
Do you believe that, in your words, that the president acted inconsistently with the Constitution, had a real effect on the polls?
On the polls.
On the way people voted?
I gave you a broad phraseology we used. We used the negative narrative around the president had an impact. So it means a whole range of issues that people raise and target the president. We're also aware and alive to the fact that a concerted attack on the president is actually directed at weakening the ANC. That we're quite alive to that.
Let's go back to the various political parties. We've spoken about the EFF. You said that you're not in discussions with the Democratic Alliance on coalition talks, but you briefly touched on other smaller parties. Are there discussions being held with them with regards to coalitions?
Yes.
And who has there been discussions with?
Many. AIC, Freedom Front, plus UDM. You can think of any. We talk to everybody. Al Jama.
And what would be a deciding factor? I mean, what does the ANC take into consideration when deciding who to go into a coalition with?
It's a person who we have something to discuss and agree on. That's what we consider. If we agree on the programs that should be implemented to deal with the plight of the poor people, if you agree with that on that, we'll have discussions with you.
Quickly moving away from politics election-wise, I mean, there's a real brewing student unrest happening at the moment. Talks of another fee increase in tertiary institutions coming up, possibly. Are you aware, are you taking note of what's happening at tertiary institutions, considering what happened at the end of last year? Are there going to be possible fee increases? I know it's a decision possibly taken by Bladen Zamande. This is an important time in our tertiary institutions.
Let me explain one concept. You know, when you talk of no fee increase, it doesn't mean that there are no fee increase. There are fee increase, but somebody else pays. That's it. So, so that is we were quite aware of that, because last year there were no fee increase, and somebody paid for that increase. Okay. University say it's not enough. We're consulting, we're collapsing. 9 of us are already in the red, 16 are struggling to survive. And what is important when you talk about that issue is that we have issued a statement that says, don't go into fee increase until the consultation is complete. And we use a terminology that says, we must find a solution that make it economically sustainable and not destroy the institutions. This is because the risk that goes with all this is to destroy institutions of higher learning. The first to go under will be historical disadvantaged institutions, your Forte, University of the North, University of Zululand, your Walter Sisulu, University of the Western Cape. Those will be the first to go under. As you discuss the no fee increase, also discuss the question of how do we sustain these institutions. For example, even if there are fee increases, for a person who is on NSFAS, that increase is an increase to the government. Okay.
And hence the taxpayer is what you're saying.
Yes, the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And if you have an increase, you have to support what we call the missing middle, which is the professionals who are neither rich nor poor. They don't qualify for NSFAS, but they can't afford university fees. The state must help them. Those are the issues that we're looking at. And in looking into those, the notion of that there is no fee increase, therefore there is free, is a notion that is actually misleading, because the state, therefore the taxpayer, does pay. And if we direct resources to higher education, you must appreciate that those resources will be taken for somewhere else. Okay. It means you'll have to slow down your housing provision. You may have to slow down your electrification program. You may do that. So that discussion is in the ANC. What can we do best? We resolved on free education for the poor. Okay. We resolved that. That's what we are desiring to achieve. But we're also alive to the fact that in achieving that, don't destroy the education system. That's why, for example, if you take 87 of basic education schools are in no-fee schools. And the notion of no-fee is a misnomer, because it's not that it is a no-fee school. The government pays the fees in those schools. It allocates resources. That is 87% of basic education. TVET colleges. NSFAS in TVET colleges is a grant. It's a bursary, it's not a loan. That is free education. final year student in degrees who are in NSFAS, that NSFAS get converted into a grant. There are gaps that must be filled, and it must be done in a way that sustains the system, that does not destroy the students.
On that topic, we had a couple of students in studio last week, and they were saying how they feel the commission that has been set up to discuss and make submissions with regards to the feasibility of education is a waste of time. They are demanding free education. We're seeing them now threaten with hashtag fees must fall reloaded. What is the ANC's view on the way that students are trying to get this message across?
The ANC sets a commission because it wants to achieve that objective without destroying the system. It is natural for any young person to be impatient. Okay, everybody, all these old people with grey beards, when they were younger, they were very impatient. So we understand and appreciate that, but it would be wrong of the ANC to just respond to impatience, rather than saying, let's achieve this objective, but it must be done in a way that does not destroy higher education. The worst scenario is when you destroy higher education, you reduce those universities. As you build 2 additional ones, you destroy any capacity that is there. You stop the programs. For example, there is a program of trying to attract young people into the academia. If you close that program, you are actually destroying the future of higher education. Therefore, it will be the current students who benefit, and in the long term, higher education will be destroyed. And all I'm saying is that the objective of free education, particularly for children from poor households, is our objective.
Let's come back to the reports. Some reports were saying that you're in talks with the DA in the Western Cape, in some municipalities in the Western Cape. Is that true?
No,
not at all.
In talks with the DA anywhere. Even in Canaland, where they wanted to. We're not in talks.
That's the one.
We're not in talks with the DA anywhere.
Okay.
I just want to touch on a different topic. Yesterday, we commemorated 4 years since the Marikana tragedy. Some people were asking, where was the ANC leadership in yesterday's commemoration proceedings in Marikana? What is your response?
Let me explain this. You know, one of the worst things you do when you're a politician is to use nasty incidents for competition. Okay. You go there, you have a parade, you ridicule each other there. That's not the issue. What is important is there was Hallam Commission, the recommendations are being implemented. The first batch of houses built by the state have been handed over. Now, to me, what you should do in Marikana is to address the socio-economic issues affecting mine workers in Marikana. If the ANC government does that, I will be more comfortable than going and contest for space with everybody else in a commemoration on the copy.
That's where we've got to leave it. So we appreciate your time.
I'm talking as a mine worker.
As a mine worker.
As a mine worker now. One of the worst things you do for mine workers is to use them as a tool for competition by everybody else.
Do you not think, though, that it would have been a nice touch, a political touch, to go there and
we
be
spend
with
a lot of time in Marikana, by the way. Okay. We spend a lot of time in Marikana. The distance is closing. But we're systematic in doing it. We don't want to make it an issue where there is a fire flare-up around us.
And just before we let you go, on that topic, Secretary General, yesterday we were looking at how far the country has come since 2012 with regards to the miners, their families, people who lost loved ones in the Marikana massacre. How far have we come, in the ANC's view and opinion, in helping and assisting those individuals there?
There is a lot of work happening there. There is also consideration of additional compensation. But you must appreciate the fact that, you know, I am a veteran of the 1987 mine workers strike, okay? That mine workers strike established two things. in the main, leave these wage increases. It established a retirement fund for black mine workers. In 1987, black mine workers had no retirement fund. Okay. Number two, it established a compensation formula for deaths in the mining industry. Okay. At that time, I don't know how far is it now. Then in 1987, we established compensation of every mine worker being paid 3 years earnings as compensation for death in mine. Not only underground, any death in the mine. To get my point? Mm-hmm. So the starting point is that those mine workers must get compensated by the company for the death. And the state must, whatever it does, must top up the benefit to those mine workers. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say more important to me will be your socio-economic problems faced by mine workers. Like, for example, Marikana, you'll find out that the majority of those mine workers want to stay in Marikana, but they still have homes in various rural homes. I worked in the mines for a number of years. I still regard Kala as my home. That's where my house is. I built my place there. I have a home there. And that is where you should look into what is it that you should do. One time we conducted a survey of workers in the hostels, whether we want to take them out of the hostels. Can I tell you? Only 24% of those mine workers then, I don't know now, said want to go out of the hostels. Because others said, no, we're here to work, we still have home back at home. Mm-hmm. So sometimes emotions and reality around mine workers is quite a different issue. And I think it is the responsibility of mine workers to work very hard and never to be used by anybody for own purpose, other than their own benefit.
SG, we're going to let you go. Thanks, we're out of time. We appreciate you coming to chat. Also paying tribute to Mantashe Stofile.